Hello, everybody. Welcome back to How Come? Hope you've had a nice week. I have been addicted to my phone, and it is not good, but we have an amazing guest today. We have Gabrielle Alexa Noel. Highly recommend following her at Gab Alexa. She is an author, a software developer, a freelance writer, and she has also been on Red Table talking polyamory with Will and Jada and Willow on the episode that Willow came out as polyamorous. Gabby is also polyamorous herself, and we talk about her relationships and what coming out was like for her. We also talk about the events of this week, which if you are not familiar with what happened at the Oscars, good for you. Wow. We will explain it in the later part of this episode, but the earlier half is really just about polyamory. Then we do discuss the thing. I know a lot of people were like, we don't want to hear anybody's opinions on this thing anymore. Gabrielle was nice enough to give me her time and let me ask some questions. And so I'm really appreciative of her coming on and giving that perspective. So if you have thoughts on the episode, please DM us, and we are here for you at How Come Podcast. We are also talking some things comedy this week, of course. And speaking of comedy, if you want to come see me, woohoo! April 22nd, a magical day. I will be in DC and on the 23rd as well with Chanel Ali opening, who is fantastic. You guys listen to our episode with Chanel and her boyfriend, Courtney Reynolds, another comic they're both so funny. But Chanel will be with me in DC. Really, it's Northern Virginia. It's at the Arlington Draft House, but DC, Maryland, Northern Virginia areas, come on out. You can get tickets down below or the link tree in my bio. And maybe stay tuned for the Marvel section of this episode for some special announcements about that. It's also very fitting that we have a Marvel section this episode because Gabrielle loves Marvel. And yeah, I think you guys are going to really enjoy this episode. Bear in mind, there is so much nuance, which there mostly is on How Come. It's never cut and dry. So enjoy the episode. We do mention some hot button, maybe triggering topics. So if anything pisses you off, just turn it off. But I think it's a really good listen.
How come? How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna jizz.
Welcome, Gabrielle Alexa Noel.
Hey.
Hey, thank you so much for joining me. I love following you online. Can you tell everybody about yourself, about your book?
Sure. Well, I started out as a freelance writer and a very online person.
A very online person, which I love.
Mm-hmm. And I think I kind of was in the niche of queer content and coming out for a little bit. I've also written a book about the internet that tries to be a sex positive guide to the internet, but for other topics, called How to Live with the Internet and Not Let It Run Your Life.
Yes, which came out last year. I feel like you just had the anniversary, right?
Yeah, it came out last year, last week.
Happy 1 year anniversary to the baby.
And I also had a huge background in sex education. So I pivoted I wanted to do sex tech, which I guess you could say I'm technically doing.
Yeah, I'm a software developer.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the internet a lot on this podcast, and I'm definitely addicted and probably need your book. But the internet this week was a Twitter with a certain scandal. And I reached out to you because you wrote a tweet about it that I was just like, yeah. But yeah, I think we'll mostly talk about your tweet and those kind of responses. And I also kind of want to talk about just sex and jokes, because that's something that came up last week when everybody was making fun of Kim Kardashian. So I'm talking about the Oscars. If you guys didn't catch it, Will and Jada and Chris and the slap.
If you're not familiar with the scandal, good for you. But if you are, and you probably are, you probably saw a lot of jokes about it, a lot of memes, some really funny, some really not. There's a lot of opinions on the slap, and we're going to talk about the nuance of it later. But a pattern that I saw with a lot of the jokes were that they were about polyamory or non-monogamy, and Gabby is polyamorous, so I wanted to get your opinion on these types of jokes. And the one that I saw you retweeted
this guy who was like, Will is better than me. I would never defend someone else's girl like that. And you quoted the tweet and you were like, literally tweet after tweet suggesting that non-monogamous Black folks are unworthy of protection and love. Why?
Because that's such a thread that, I mean, I've seen so many that were like, well, what did you expect? And there's like a heavy implication that because that's the type of relationship they have, that she is doing something wrong, but not so much of an indictment of him. So it's also kind of gendered. And it just seems like the expectation then is that she's like not worthy of protection, not worthy of respect, and is just like this bad person. It's like slut shaming on 1,000, when from an outside perspective, it seems like he loves her well. They've been together for so long. So it's a little out of pocket that people are like, well, then she should just accept disrespect if that was what was going on. You even have that, oh my God, that annoying conservative TikToker. He's just like always yelling. What's his name?
I don't know if I see him.
But he was like, how come you can take all that dick, but you can't take a joke? And it's like, what dick? First of all, just because someone has an open relationship does not mean they're taking dick, because queer people exist, but also because you could just not necessarily always be motivated to go. Like, there are people with like varied libidos participating in non-monogamy. So it's just like such a weird thing to focus on just because you know someone has had a non-monogamous relationship, not even that they currently have. Oh, he said unlimited amounts. It's Christian Walker, that motherfucker. Jada Smith can take unlimited amounts of, and then he said eggplant emoji, but can't take a joke.
Yeah, the ones I saw too were Will is open to everything in his marriage except jokes. And yeah, I think they are one of the first celebrity couples that I've ever heard of speak openly about being open and in a positive way. Then that brings us to, if it's a positive in their life, can you punch down at it?
I mean, I'm sure that, because I know when people say that about me or my relationships, I'm always like, no, that doesn't really affect me. But I think it's about what it communicates to other people. And it's why everyone's like, oh, these polyamorous people, they're so ugly and annoying and messy. And it's like, okay, but then when you have people who are seemingly just happy and polyamorous, and you see someone who's defending his partner in an open relationship, then it's like, couldn't be me. I'm not going to defend someone like that. It's like a subtle way of implying that these people have less value.
That makes sense to me. And just going back to like the unlimited dicks thing, I have a friend, Dan Perlman, who's a comedian. He was in an open relationship, and the open relationship didn't work out for him. But he had this joke. He was like, open relationship, that means we can hook up with other people, but we only want to fight with each other. It really didn't change much about our relationship at all. You know, nobody else wants to fuck us. We thought it was each other holding us back, but it was just everyone else's free will.
You know, like it's still dating.
It's still dating. I'm like, it's like one day I'm like getting my heart broken. I am devastated. The next day I'm like with a partner being like, okay, I guess it's not that bad. It's, you know, a very unique experience. So they have no idea. They have no idea. But it is also more people protecting you. You know, it's having potentially having more people in your life who respect you and want you to be emotionally healthy and would stand up for you. Hopefully.
Do you know Jess Tom?
Of course. Well, yeah, not well, but yeah, in person.
No,
yes.
My tweets aren't loading. Well, Jess,
I feel like I know exactly the tweet you're talking about, and it was perfect.
I'm sure you do. We're on the same side of Twitter, just not TikTok. Oh, here it is. Okay. The whole point of non-monogamy is to assemble a team of people who would slap for you, an army of love.
Period. I sent it to my partners, and I was like, so just wondering, like, is this what we're trying to start up, or
I would amend it to, would slap for me, not will.
Yeah.
When did you come out as polyamorous?
To who?
As to yourself.
Myself? Okay.
Yeah.
Like right before the pandemic, and then
Really?
Well, I think for like a year before the pandemic, I was like kind of dating non-monogamously, but I wasn't like identifying as non-monogamous myself. And I was still...
What does that mean then? Just like being...
I had like non-serious, non-monogamous partners, but then sometimes I'd also be like, never mind, like this monogamous person likes me, so I'm gonna go on a date with them. And then like, I don't think I had committed to dating in any particular style. And there, I mean, I was even like, I think there's a name for would go either way. And I was like looking up the label and everything. And then I was like, well, what, in part being like, at least for me, I don't think this is true for everyone, but I think I was restricting myself from actually dating like fully non-monogamously by being like, oh, I could do either. Because when you say that you would do either and you're going on dates with people who don't necessarily want to date non-monogamously, it kind of like defaults to monogamous.
Totally.
So I felt
if you end up liking that person, it's like, okay, now I will be monogamous because this is your preference.
Right. So I was like, let me try to be more intentional and just be like, hey, I'm actually exploring non-monogamy right now. How do you feel about that? And then I ended up with my girlfriend that I'm still with now. And I mean, we started dating a month before the pandemic. So that was
cute. Lucky.
Wild. I mean, wild. It was like our friends were either moving in together or breaking up. We're like, so which one do we want to do? We stayed together. We didn't move in, but we had to like shack up somewhere for a little bit. And then we came out of the pandemic. I mean, not that we're out of the pandemic, but we were vaccinated and started going out again. And number one, I was depressed and anxious and from staying home for a year and not used, like before the pandemic, seeing her date and her seeing me date, we were a well-oiled machine. When we started hanging out again, I was like, oh my God, it's just been the two of us for like a year. Now we're going to go date other people. We were spending weeks. And I was like, I'm supposed to give up half the week. Like it was huge growing pains. And no one talks about how the polyamorous community suffered in this pandemic.
Sad.
Yeah, it was for a bit. Yeah. And then I started dating my boyfriend, but like we were just like Instagram DMing and FaceTiming.
As you do.
Like, and I can't
Diaz.
I just can't believe we were like, I was like going on Zoom dates. I did Zoom speed dating. Like I was really like, I'm going to be polyamorous somehow. And it just like kept not working. And then he reached out and he was cute. And then we went on a FaceTime date. And then finally, once we were vaccinated, a real date. And now I have a boyfriend.
So fun. And they know each other and they talk.
Yeah, they are cool. We send memes. We've hung out.
We love that.
We're pretty close. Him and his partner who he lives with had not seen Infinity War and Endgame. And I was like, we will come over and watch Infinity War and Endgame. Like to watch other people experience the snap for the first time.
But had they seen the other movies?
But they didn't really get it.
That's the thing. You can't watch it with people who don't get it.
They had seen Guardians of the Galaxy and I'm sure like Iron Man. So I feel like there was like kind of enough of a working knowledge to be into it.
My friend, I wanted her to watch WandaVision so badly. And she was like, do I need to like see anything before? And I was like, yes, we'll watch Infinity War and Endgame. And she was like, I feel that you have just wasted hours of my life.
Throughout the pandemic, I made my girlfriend go from like beginning of the MCU to the end and every release for like the first people at the theater. But she's still not like, she's like, no one needs to see all of those movies just to get WandaVision. Like stop forcing people to watch MCU. And so I'm trying to reorient myself. And I will say, I think WandaVision can stand on its own. It's still like a really good exploration of grief. And I even think without all of the additional like knowledge that you have of the Marvel universe, that it like adds a little like sprinkle, because then like things are more shocking, and
then maybe you could watch it backwards. Like I did this with Cobra Kai and Karate Kid. Like I watched all of Cobra Kai and then I watched Karate Kid, and it's like seeing like a really well cast prequel and then getting to experience what we see in those movies after WandaVision might be really fun.
That's true. So I'm just like, watch WandaVision because it's so good. I feel like then they'll be hooked.
Just watch it, you guys. If you like TV, like it's a great homage to TV.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm so obsessed with the Marvel Universe that I went to like a non-monogamy mixer and I got drunk. Whoops. And apparently like, I just went up to this guy that I have a crush on. And I was like, do you like Marvel? And he was like, yes. And I was like, anyway, that's enough for me. Do you want to have sex? And he was like, I have work in the morning. I can't.
What? So why was he there?
Why was he there? It wasn't like a play party, but so then at the next play party, apparently I didn't go, but my boyfriend and my metamor went, and apparently
it's a metamor.
Metamor is my partner's partner.
Ah, okay, cool.
So they went, and apparently I was trying to sleep with my metamor and him at the party, and then he had work, and then I was like, oh, but you like Marvel, like that's drunk me just likes two things. And so he was like, oh, maybe next time is Gabby coming to the play party. So I got a text message saying like, apparently you were drunk and you asked him if he liked Marvel, and then asked him to have a threesome.
Oops, that's your move. It's like mostly you knew if girls are hitting on you if they ask your sign, but if Gabby asks you if you watch Marvel, that's an invitation.
I mean, it also is a testament. I think this is specific to like men. It's a testament to the fact that like men, I'm just like, do you like Marvel? Do you want to have sex? And they're like, yes, or maybe they consider it. Like this is genuinely working for me.
I love that. The last time I was in a play space, it was not a party, it was a book launch, but it was at NSFW and
this book launch.
Oh my God, were you there?
It was Leah Holmgren's one. I like hosted it for her.
No. Are there that many like kinky book launches? I just thought.
Are you thinking of Gigi's?
No, she did. Oh my God. Everyone.
Gigi Engel had her book launch there too. But yeah, this girl taught me a line that if we're talking about lines that work, she was saying whenever she travels and meets somebody, she goes, tonight's my last night in town.
Nice.
And then they want to make it like a night to remember.
Wait, I'm going to take that. I'm going on vacation next month.
Isn't that amazing? I feel like you could also do it in your own city. Like you could like cosplay being from out of town and just be like, yeah, tonight's my last night in town.
I just feel like New York is I've made New York such a personality trait. I don't know how to turn that off and pretend that I'm from somewhere else. But
okay, true. But when you're on vacation.
When I'm on vacation, I'm taking that.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Okay. So. We were talking about what they've shared. I kind of just want to go through a timeline of what they've shared about their relationship. At least at my job, we're like always trying to dissect the news about non-monogamy. So we always talk about the Smiths. And I'm always like, they've released a new statement that has clarified nothing. What does that mean? And I mean, I was on an episode of Red Table Talk a year ago. It was like, God.
They called me on the day of my book launch. So I was like wasted in the park. And they're like, we need you to fly out tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. My drunk ass. I was like, okay. And my friends are like, we're going to get her on the plane.
Wait, what were you going to say about that episode?
I was going to say that Jada and Will did not say anything about being non-monogamous, and
you were on,
when I was on, right? And it was more so about Willow coming out, right? That was the episode. That episode she came out as polyamorous, and then what I will say is that the vibe behind the scenes was very much, and it was like kind of like a winky thing. So I don't know if that was just people. I cannot, confirm or deny anything, but like they definitely like, I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about polyamory. And they're like, well, you know why this is a topic. And then they brought me out. So I was kind of like, I'm so confused I'm even more confused about where they stand. One minute they're like, it's open, then it's not. And then it is. And then literally I'm there and I'm still like, but which one is it?
And were you poly at this time?
Yeah. I didn't even have like my boyfriend or anything yet. So I was just like, I only have one partner right now, but I'm out here.
And now 2 partners. So fun. Okay, now let's get back into Will and Jada's story.
So 2013, Jada kind of denies an open marriage, but not really. There were rumors that she and Will were in an open relationship, and she wrote, "Here is how I will change my statement. Will and I both can do whatever we want because we trust each other to do so. This does not mean we have an open relationship. This means we have a grown one."
Yeah, I have no idea what that means.
I wanted to talk about that verbiage of a grown couple. I was interested in that because you have a video where you were talking about Kanye West,
Julia Fox,
were apparently in an open relationship, and they said that they were evolved beings.
Yeah, I hate that. But, and I don't even know if they were in a relationship. It's just so suspicious. I don't even know what they were doing. But yeah, I just don't know what she means. So I can't even tell, like, does she mean grown as in she's like more grown? In which case I would disagree. I don't think that it's more grown. Like, people have trauma and they have attachment to, I think we've learned safety as monogamy. So like, it's literally telling people like to activate their nervous system in a way that that not everybody, I think, should have to do. Or
right. And like everybody is different. So being like, oh, we're more evolved is like, oh, that's the final form you're seeking, is like this fucking Charizard, and it's like, well, actually, we're more like Eevees. Some of us will turn into a Flareon. Are you not a Pokemon person?
No, I love that. I am a Pokemon person.
Some of us will be a Vaporeon. Yeah. I'm a Vaporeon because I'm a Squirtle. But like, not everybody is seeking the same thing. So to be like more evolved, it's like, oh, like I think more evolved into yourself, which is a really great sentiment. Or like, if somebody's saying like more grown into our relationship, we've grown together and we have a grown trust that's been established. Like that's a different thing than being like, we're grown-ups, so we're open. It's like, that's not everybody's experience.
Yeah. I mean, again, I just don't know what she meant by that, especially since she's still not clarifying if they are practicing a particular like relationship dynamic that is like non-traditional. I still, what are they saying? I feel like it's just word salad every time, which is fine because people don't have to disclose their relationship dynamic to anyone. But I like just don't know what that quote can even be analyzed as.
Who, Jada's or?
Jada's about
grown,
being grown relationship. He was also talking about trust. So it's like, so, maybe it's trust, or maybe
yeah. It's also like they trust the constraints of their relationship, which is like, there are certain people who would think that DMing somebody is cheating,
or like liking a picture.
Yeah, totally. And like, those are the totally okay restraints within a certain relationship. If like, that's what's established. And I think that she was just kind of alluding to like, we have things that we're okay with, and I trust him not to do things that I'm not okay with.
Yeah. Which I would say is grown. If that specific abstract concept is what she's referring to, then yes.
Yeah. I know a couple that the rules within that relationship is they could do anything except for he could not. That was the rule. And it was like, okay, like people have to work together in their couple or in their throuple or in their quad or however many, like, what are the constraints? What's everyone comfortable with?
Correct. I will say that seems like such an unrealistic, how do you enforce that? But, again,
apparently they did.
If boundaries work for people, like if that boundary works, I'm impressed. But
yeah.
That's awesome. Never.
Great
I like never, I'm never one to yuck someone's yum. But like, wow, how are they?
Yeah. And I'm always wondering, like, why is that the specific rule, you know? But it's like, you know, people come at things from different angles and different experiences.
This is when I was like mostly in monogamous relationships, but I used to sleep with couples like in the interim between relationships. And there were a lot who did have that, or it would be like, you're not allowed to kiss. I'm like, he's literally inside of me, but we can't kiss. Okay. You know, sure. If that's your rule, but I will say, like, now that I'm more in like play and kink spaces and more so around polyamorous people rather than just like non-monogamous, I don't even, it's a very different atmosphere.
More open.
Yeah. I will say a lot less like boundaries, but like a lot of checking in conversations and a lot of processing and a lot of, you know, which I like.
Or what's it called?
Aftercare. A lot of
aftercare. I was going to say like afterglow.
I don't even like the word aftercare anymore, because sometimes, like at first it was aftercare, but then sometimes like a partner will be like, oh, can we before do something, or can, so I'm like, there's not really a time where the care happens. Like the care kind of is like,
yeah, it's like you don't care. You just started caring after you nutted. That sucks.
Right. So, you know, if I'm like going on a date or something and my partner's like, oh, I really want to see you around that time, we're not like, it has to be the day after, because that would be unrealistic. I like
present care. I like all the time care. Care for me. Love me. Right. Okay, so then in our timeline, Will addresses divorce rumors. There's persistent separation rumors by clarifying the pair were not getting a divorce. And he said, so in the interest of redundant, repetitious, over and over again-ness, Jada and I are not getting a divorce. And then in 2018, he revealed that he and Jada don't refer to themselves as married. On Rap Radar, he said they refer to themselves as partners, where you get into that space where you realize you are literally with somebody for the rest of your life. There's no deal breakers. There's nothing she could do ever. Nothing that would break our relationship. She has my support till death, and it feels good to get that space. Still not saying anything about openness or whatever. But then 2020, August, Aslina claims that he had an affair with Jada. He said they first met in 2015, but it wasn't until 2020 that he claimed that he and Jada had dated while she was married, and that her and Will's marriage was open during that time. It's not an affair if it's allowed.
But I also know there's some like monogamous people who are like, we could just do one little day or one little week, and that to them, they don't describe it as openness. So I also was like, there are some scenarios where I could see them still being like, we're not open, but like multiple truths can exist at once. And I don't understand otherwise how the narratives fit together.
He had a great quote that he was like, we never surprise each other with anything. Like he knew.
Yeah. You know? A good way to say it too. We never surprise each other, because that's, you know, at least as someone practicing polyamory, what can be so activating for people is like when they're like, oh my God, I didn't expect this. Like I prepared for every non-monog scenario, but this one is, no one prepared me. You didn't give me a warning. I'm surprised. I'm shocked. So for him to say like, we never surprise each other, I'm like, that's safety. They feel safe with each other.
Yeah. Like nobody's lying or cheating because it's not considered cheating within these constraints. And I think that is lost on a lot of monogamous people who see a woman, like, I think they see a woman in an open relationship as like, oh my God, like this is like, how would you let your wife get fucked by somebody else? But they're not considering he's also in this relationship. And what about, like, I don't really see too many women on the internet being like, whoa, like Jada is a cuck because Will allegedly wanted to have this, like he said, like harem of like 19 celebrity women that he like listed or whatever. Like, I don't see people making fun of her for that, but I see them making fun of him.
Right. I mean, I will say there is a narrative around, maybe not like that she's a cuck, but like this, like, oh, we feel bad.
No, but they call him a cuck.
They do call him a cuck. But for her, they're like, oh, like there's like a pity almost that she must have settled for this non-relationship because she doesn't respect herself or whatever else. And it reminds me of, I went to a pool hall with my boyfriend like 2 weeks ago, and he was outside smoking a cigarette. So this guy at the bar bought me a drink, and I was like, oh no, you don't have to. And then he was like, oh, like you have a boyfriend. But the way he phrased it was like, oh, you're taken. And I was like, well,
nah, yeah.
You know, I was like, no, like you can still talk to me. And he's like, oh, you have a boyfriend. Like, I'll leave you alone. I was like, no, I mean, if you want to hang out until he comes, I'm fine with that. My boyfriend will not be mad. And it wasn't clicking. So then I was like, no, my boyfriend has other partners too. Do you want to just hang out for the 5 minutes until he comes back down? And he looked at me with the saddest eyes, like the most somber expression. And he went, oh, I'm sorry. And I was like, no, in the most positive of ways.
Yeah. You're not like, oh, my boyfriend cheats on me, so like I'm down to cheat too.
Yeah.
You were like, I was just kind of explaining the parameters of our relationship.
Just in a normal, neutral way.
Do you watch Marvel?
Right. Wow, that really would have been my next line if you stayed around. And then my boyfriend comes and he's like, I'll get up. And I'm like, you don't have to give up your seat. We're going to go sit at the table anyway. It was just, he just made it so weird. And that's genuinely like how monogamous people treat it. Like it seems so outside of what they would be comfortable with that they think that we are miserable. And they act weird.
So wait, have they never said that they're open? Like besides these statements?
They have never said. It's just been these like very vague statements. I think there was another pretty recent one that was also like, okay, so what does that mean? But again, I was at the set, I was at their house, and everyone was kind of like, well, and there was like this very not unspoken because we were speaking, but like no one wanted to confirm or deny, but everyone was kind of winking about that. And I was like, don't understand what that means. I need things to be explicit, straightforward. So I just don't even.
Do you think growing up like with an example of poly parents would maybe make you more comfortable in coming out?
You know, maybe. I will say that like the society at large is still so like anti-monogamy. Like there's, anti-non-monogamy. There's even so much conversation over like, if my partner cheated, I would like beat them up, which is a weird response. The fact that people think it's justified to beat someone up for wanting to be non-monogamous, but then thought that Will Smith smacking someone on stage was out of pocket.
Just to backtrack for anybody who didn't watch the Oscars or wasn't on Twitter, do you want to give an account of what happened? Chris
Rock, whose sense of humor I have no longer enjoyed, made a joke about Jada's alopecia, and she's been very forthcoming about the struggles of not having all of her hair. And I also struggle with similar issues. So I was like, yeah, I definitely see a lot of things in my own experience.
Yeah.
And especially because there's such a heightened importance on Black hair in this community, especially as like a hair that white supremacy has taught us is not beautiful, that we literally had to create legislation to make sure that people are not discriminating against.
I don't think a lot of people know that.
That was like last week too.
I know.
But like it was pretty recent. I was like,
no, and I was like, I think a lot of people don't realize that you could discriminate employing someone on the basis of their hairstyle.
Correct.
And a lot of it had to do with Black hair in its natural form.
Correct. And I even, when I was like looking for jobs in magazines and publications and stuff like that, I remember going to an interview and my mom being like, oh, you're not gonna do the straight hair, like you put on like a straight wig or something, because like she was a job hunter, that was what the norm was. And I was like, no, it's a little different. I mean, not that different, but a little different.
Yeah.
So just from that perspective, obviously, like hair is just such a sensitive spot for Black women in particular, especially one who has alopecia. And
Chris Rock did that entire documentary about hair.
I guess. I mean, it wasn't like, it's not like in that documentary he was woke in particular. So I know a lot of people have mentioned that documentary, and I don't know that it necessarily means that he like had a politic around that. But just in general, it's a very white-centric event. And so it's also like, who are you performing this comment for?
Right.
Why is she the butt of jokes in this particular space? Just so many things. And Will Smith, I think saw Jada looking uncomfortable, and he went on stage and he slapped Chris Rock. He got up and he defended his wife. And I definitely think that there is something admirable, at least in seeing someone defended like that in public. Like, and I think people have looked at it as like, what if it's just performance, that like he was trying to signal a message or something? And even if he was, I like the message. The message is not to talk about a Black woman's alopecia in that way. And I think that that was a really positive message, even if it looked poorly on him. And, you know, there's a lot of backlash and different nuanced opinions on this.
Yeah, like as a comic, I was shocked just because I've never been hit on stage. I know comics who have. The worst thing that ever happened to me is like a guy booped my nose after a show, and like
I hate when guys boop. Why did they do that?
And he was like it was like gross. Like, and he got really close and he was like, "You were funny." And I was just like, "Oh, don't touch me." So like from that perspective, like I was literally like, no hitting.
I personally, I'm a words person. I love a good kumbaya moment. I don't know why. I think I would have grabbed the mic and been like, I would have started educating on alopecia. I don't know. So it's not to say that I would do the same thing, but I understand.
Yeah.
I don't know that they would have let that happen, but you know what?
They let him get on stage. Like once you're on stage, you're on stage. Everyone's like, oh, this is part of it.
That's true.
You know, like Kanye got on stage during Taylor Swift's thing.
No, they did. And they let him talk for a while.
They let him talk for a while.
I'm sure there are other things that moved him away from education and more towards that, like, you know, a history that we're not privy to. But I just, at least either way, the message got across. And now a lot of us are very educated on alopecia.
Totally. I personally didn't know that she had alopecia. I thought it was just like a bald joke, but even like hearing that like it is so important, like even making a bald joke would be in poor taste. Did you know that she had spoken about it?
Yeah, well, I watch Red Table Talk, and she said it on Red Table Talk, and I think I have like a different type. I mean, I don't know the intricacies of her health or even mine, because I just started seeing people about it.
We have an amazing episode with my dad, and we talk about all the different types of alopecia.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah. But I would have thought that the Oscars would have vetted that joke.
And I don't know how true this is, because like I tend to like, I'm very about fact checking, and I didn't know this. But as though I saw someone indicating that they had said that the joke was in poor taste and Chris Rock made it anyway. Not certain if that's true. I didn't fact check that one. I'm always like upfront about what I didn't fact check. But I can understand, like, I do think that there is an atmosphere at events like this where like jokes that are honestly for me always very cringy. It's very rarely that I'm like, oh, I love this roast. I think maybe they just thought it was edgy humor.
Yeah.
And I think even if it's not like about Will Smith and Chris Rock as two people, and Jada Pinkett Smith, of course, like it's about the whole concept. It's about saying universally, this is not the way that you talk about someone. And unfortunately, I mean, I've still seen people talking about Jada in that way. In fact, I feel like a certain group of people has been more motivated to be denigrating and bigoted. But I think a lot of other people are also getting an education on the nuances of Black hair. So you know what? Sure.
Yeah, I think also it's just like there's definite places where we're supposed to go after stuff like that. And those are roasts. It's kind of like where everybody signs up for that. And like, you can joke about deadly diseases and horrible things happening.
Oh no, I'm planning a roast for my next birthday. I turned 30. So,
ooh, so fun.
So, but of course, what's different there is consent.
Exactly. And there's one of the Oscar gags was Amy Schumer asking Kirsten Dunst to get up and calling her a seat filler.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That has been misunderstood by some people as disrespecting Kirsten Dunst and not seeing her for her worth and like talking to her husband instead. And I'm like, Kirsten was in on the joke and Jesse Plemons was acting like he was disgusted, but he wasn't.
I think in that case, I always ask like, what is the truth that's being like poked fun of by this joke, right? Mm-hmm. In that case, the joke, they're poking fun of the fact that she's literally an Oscar contender at the Oscars versus
exactly.
With the Chris Rock joke, the joke is that Jada has alopecia.
That she's bald.
Right, that she's bald and that, you know, I don't know if he knew or not, but the joke comes down to something that she potentially can't control, that he doesn't have like further insight into versus we all know Kirsten Dunst. I mean, she was in Spider-Man. That's
we all know Kirsten Dunst, except for maybe Gen Z who just found out that Maud Apatow is Judd Apatow's daughter.
Okay, I just found out about that, but
my God.
I saw the tweet and I was like, oh, good thing someone tweeted because now I don't have to pretend.
How have you not? Did you not watch like what is it? This is 40.
I didn't put it together. I just thought, what a cute kid. I love that movie, actually.
So funny. Or I think they're in Knocked Up too, both of the kids.
Yeah. It's like the Knocked Up, This is 40 extended universe.
But yeah, all of my TikTok now is like nepotism babies that people are just finding out about. They're like, Tracy Ellis Ross is Diana Ross's daughter. And I'm like, how did you not know?
Yeah, I agree with that one. I 100% knew that.
But going back to Kirsten Dunst, it's like she had consent, Amy. Like Kirsten was in on the joke. She stood up. Jesse was in on the joke. Jada never had that consent.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too that there has been so much talk about needing to protect women, especially in the Oscars space. You know, it's like Harvey Weinstein has the most Oscars, you know, Woody Allen, Roman Polanski, these people, Ansel Elgort is in West Side Story, you know, all of these things that like, I'm like, I can't believe that this is still happening. But at the same time, like I can. And from the place that I was watching, I was just like, ugh. We're watching abuse happen again, and we're all still okay with somebody getting an award without knowing context or whatever. Like, that's just how it registered to me. And I was like, everyone seems so spineless and like, yeah, just down for more hurt to happen.
I mean, I think they were all like, well, we're live. So
we're live.
You know, and I think that is very much the vibe of the entertainment industry. It's like, okay, but we have a commitment here. We already are doing this. Mm-hmm. But I will say, at least from my angle, it didn't look like it was like particularly hard. And it looked like to me, like they just people who handled their business. Cause I know that I have friends who have said some really out of pocket stuff and have handled their beef and then they're friends again. And I don't know that it needed to be policed via the academy. Like they even had a meeting about it when it's honestly an interpersonal thing, right? It's between two people and those two people handled it.
But we all saw it too.
We did all see it.
And anybody I think who comes from a family, like I was seeing a lot of these tweets where that were like, oh, like, did anybody get flashbacks to when like their parent hit them and then like turned it on the next second and everybody was like, that's fine, you know, and that kind of, and so I feel for people coming from those situations who like didn't have the context still. And even, I mean, with context, a lot of us will still say like, don't smack somebody.
I had a discussion with my girlfriend about the same thing because she also thought of abusers and her family's life. And I think I did not even think about that. Like not because I'm not exposed to those things, but because I think I exist in communities where I understand that emotional violence can be just as harmful. And I knew that responding to emotional violence with physical violence because he was very like eye for an eye. And, you know, there are so many like small indecencies in the way people treat Black women that like rack up over time. So it also is that when one more hits, you're kind of like, you didn't do all of those previous shitty things, but like you now represent all of the shitty things that I have to eat every single day just to be in this space. And I think with that weight, like I just immediately, even if she didn't have alopecia, I just understood the weight of being like, she's the butt of someone's joke right now. And I don't like that. So much of the conversation right now is about the don't say gay bill, which understands that in the absence of learning something or hearing something or seeing something represented, that there is like a violence that is committed on young people, like the absence of words. So if absence of words has impact, it seems like it's a really easy thing to see that then words have impact. The
presence of words have impact as well.
Right. Anyone who has been emotionally abused also knows that like words do have impact. And it's not just like the words at their face value, but the context that the words exist and what other words have been said in other contexts. So like, I think the situation needs to be looked at holistically. And at the end of the day, for the millions of people who are weighing in, none of them got slapped.
Yeah.
By Will Smith on that stage.
Yet.
I genuinely think that, you know, knowing that he would have to say something for it later, that he was like, everyone keeps making fun of me and my partner and they're not going to disrespect my partner. I think it was more so like the context that it happened, that he wanted to communicate not only to Chris Rock, but like to everybody watching, you know?
Yeah. Do you think the memes about like the August situation like hurt his feelings?
I can't imagine being that well known and not having the social media boundaries to not really see those things. Like, because I already know I have set my social media up in such a way that I'm not seeing a whole bunch of negative shit about myself. Yeah. So I don't even know that he's aware. And in the Janet episode of Red Table Talk, he was saying that like his friends have stepped in to be like, oh no, you don't want to read this or you don't want to see that. At least when it came to things she was saying. So I feel like they would do that in all cases.
Yeah, no, you're right about that.
There was an episode where Janet Hubbard, who played, she was the original Aunt Viv on the Fresh.
Yeah.
Where he sat down with her because they hadn't spoken since she left the show. And he was talking about how like, because he didn't think that he had her approval, and he was like projecting the mom role onto her, that he like felt rejected, even though she wasn't like outwardly rejecting him. He had some, and how he related it to his,
in what way rejecting him? Like,
he related it to his mom, who he felt like her husband had been abusive. So he felt like was not able to protect her, and like therefore like was not good enough for his mom. So then he projected that onto that like maternal relationship that he had with first Aunt Viv. And he feels like that's why he was so toxic in their relationship. And it was fascinating to see him. Why
would it go that way though?
You know, I
like if you wanted to
perfectly, you have to see the episode, but yeah. I think it was more apparent hearing him talk about it. But I think like in the process of talking about it, he then goes, oh, okay. So like, I now recognize that I have this like trauma that relates to my parents, and that I'm all like seeking approval and that I'm very big on protecting, and that I have a lot of guilt or shame related to like not protecting this person. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we see that in someone even causing emotional or psychological harm, which I think are valid forms of harm. Mm-hmm. That he was like, I'm going to protect her in this environment where it's like mostly white people being invited to laugh at your alopecia. That's wild. So I was okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think he probably wouldn't do it again, hopefully.
Hopefully.
But I think a lot of us in that moment, like if you've been watching him and looking up to him for a while, like, oh, but you knew.
I mean, it was still a confusing instance.
Okay.
They like tried to like edit around. I don't know what they were trying to do, but it was like jumpy and then the audio went out. So I still had to like process it. But certainly that was one of my first thoughts when I actually understood what just happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just like, oh, like, do they hate each other? Like, was that real?
I don't think they like each other, to be honest. I remember Chris Rock making a joke about the Smith family at the last time he hosted an award show. So I'm not even thinking that they're on good terms. I can't believe that he would make a comment like that for like, just in general, knowing the audience and knowing it's going to be on TV. Like what was the function of that joke? And I'm not a comedian, but I do think that humor that punches down is like not even as funny or as smart as humor that it's like that is still respectful or is intelligent or is, you know, coming at a system more so than at a person.
Yeah.
So I'm just perplexed. Like they couldn't think of anything funnier.
Yeah. No, well, that's usually my thing when I am offended by a joke. I'm just like, couldn't you do better? You know?
Right. I wasn't going to watch the Oscars this year because I was just like, every year they don't nominate movies that I've seen. They like literally act like they haven't even heard of some like of the most beautiful films that I've seen. So what even is the point? And they don't think, as a Marvel fan, I think that Spider-Man was an achievement. I think it.
Oh my God, yes.
It deserves something, like recognition of something. And the fact that there is no category, and then they did the fan favorite and Cinderella outpaced No Way Home. I was like, what even is this? So
yeah,
it also doesn't even feel like they are like modern.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just like it for the fashions.
I agree. But so I wasn't going to watch it. I was like, oh, the Oscars are like just not for me. And they're, you know, Oscars so white every year trends. Like, so I was like, oh, Oscars. But my girlfriend was like, I really want to watch it. We're going to do an Oscars party. Let's do it. I'm like, all right, fine. So then I asked, she said my boyfriend was invited. So I was like, hey, like, what are your feelings on the Oscars? He goes, Oscars is racist. I was like, all right, wow. So to walk in and be like, all right, I'm just gonna pay a little bit of attention to this award show that honestly fails to recognize some great Black art and great art all the time, and then is, you know, putting on a facade of like inclusivity this time. What was that We Don't Talk About Bruno remix? I can't even believe it.
Yeah, I think that was the other clip that you were talking about of Chris Rock in 2016 when he hosted. He was making fun of Jada for staying home and boycotting the Oscars for being racist and not including Black actors and Black creators and writers and all that stuff. And
so I think for me, like some of the glam of the Oscars is kind of like the magic is like extinguished for me, because I'm like, they're not even going to recognize movies I care about anyway. This is not. I used to see them as this like neutral arbiter of talent, like, oh, they are the deciders. And once that was kind of shattered for me, I was like, well, they're not deciding. So it's not to me like.
It's a night where you can find out the taste of a certain group of people, but it's not necessarily correct.
Right. And I also feel like the Smith family probably feels that way. They're probably like, yeah, let's just go. They're going to give us our little award thing. Like, we're going to go. There's going to be a party. But I don't think that they have that same like esteem that some of the white people talking about this do for the Oscars. So that's why they weren't like, I need to behave respectably in this environment. They're like, this is a environment that has been violent, that literally every year trends Oscars so white for the violence of like overlooking and neglecting particular groups of people. And you're not going to disrespect her alopecia on top of that. I feel like that too is like important context.
Mm-hmm. And also I think historically, like I've seen this going around too, is like Chris Rock doesn't seem to be well liked.
I mean, I don't know if he did something recently that people weren't really fond of, but I wasn't fond of him continuing to host even when they were in the midst of Oscars so white. I think if it was incredibly difficult for them to find a Black host, that would have said a lot. And then for him to make jokes about people who weren't there is like, whose side are you on?
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, this is another one that it was like I keep seeing people say that last night was the ugliest night in Oscar history. The Oscars was where a Native American woman was booed while asking for equality, where blackface and yellowface was celebrated, where Michael Moore was booed for trying to stop genocide in Iraq, and child rapists were given awards. Can we not do this? Hattie McDaniel was only let into the Oscars as a favor to her white agent, where she sat at a table in the far corner alone, separated from the other cast and crew for an award that she won.
Definitely. And like they didn't invite Rachel Zegler, is her name?
They weren't going to.
But I mean, I thought maybe they were, I don't know. Maybe they were just waiting to send her a like announcer invite. I don't know.
I don't think so. I think that they only do things when it looks like it's going to look good for them. Like, yeah. I feel like a really misplaced thing that they thought would be, amazing, is to have Green Book win.
Mm-hmm.
It was as if they thought, if we make a movie about a person who is Black and that are there in the movie, and that will make us seem less racist. And then everybody is receiving the award for it was white. Oops. Like,
also, like, I just don't even think they watch and therefore consider some of the films that like I've seen. And I mean, I just love movies. So I see a lot of bullshit movies. It's not like I'm trying to advocate for like one of the Lifetime films I watch, but there are films that genuinely are.
A Christmas Prince, all 3 parts.
Oh, wait. Okay. I love Prince. Great movie. But there's movies that I'm like, weren't these even considered? Like, did you even see them? I don't even think the majority of the people voting saw those movies, had heard of those movies.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the core problem. And if that's, the establishment that they are, cool, but I'm not going to hold them to the same esteem. And therefore, I think that was a perfectly acceptable location in which to make sure someone does not disrespect your wife again.
So after the slap and honestly a really good recovery from a performer standpoint of Chris Rock, like just like being like, okay, and we're moving on. And like,
yeah, I think that was in part why at first I was like, wait, what just happened? Because
exactly.
He just was like, all right, anyway.
Yeah. But what you see in the uncensored version, which thank you to Japan and Australia for these. Yeah. Like we saw that it was not a joke that Will Smith calls out. He's like, keep my wife's fucking name out of your mouth. And then Chris Rock goes, I will. Like, he's like, I will. And then he goes, ooh, I could. And I'm like, you could what? Like, I was wondering, like, what do you think he meant in that moment?
Oh, I didn't actually know that he said,
okay.
I only watched up to the Chris Rock part. And then I was like, well, the slap's over. And I closed it. Wow, there was more video. My bad.
There's more video. Yeah. So he's like, ooh, I could. And I was like, I could what? Like, I could attack you right now, or I could say so many things about you, like just start ripping into like, or, like jokes. Like, does he have like 15 minutes on the Smith family, what would those jokes be?
I mean, the joke is the non-monogamy thing, right? That's what everyone's joke is. So, I mean, almost certainly that's what he meant. But that's everyone else got their jokes off, right?
Okay, this has been so fun to talk to you. And I think you offer a really great perspective on a lot of things. And I'm happy to have had you here. We always ask everyone on this podcast about their first time coming. Do you remember yours?
So I had masturbated a few times, but I never really came. I was like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. And then it was I believe it was either the first time I used a toy or the first time that I used a shower head or something. And I was like, whoa, I can't believe that. And then I was so ashamed because I was very young and no one had given me context for that to happen. So then I had a spiral for 2 days. But then I did it again. So I came out okay.
Amazing. How young are we talking?
I can't really remember. I know it was elementary school because then I remember in junior high school that I was I'm fine now. So I'm going to say 5th grade, but maybe I don't have a great memory though. It could have been junior high school.
I don't know. It doesn't matter. I just like the fact that you're I felt bad about it and then I got over it.
Well, I mean, over a period of time, but the religious shame and the shame of just my peers who were shitty about masturbation. Poor them.
I mean, there's another thing of words being fucking detrimental. I remember somebody talking about female masturbation in a really disgusting way. I was like, oh, I shouldn't do that. You know?
Exactly. So I was also oh my God, people are going to look at me and just know. And I'm so gross. And I've been watching a lot of media that represents masturbation, especially even young people masturbating. I was just watching a movie and I was literally oh my God, I feel so weird because at that age, I wouldn't have seen that depicted. And then I'm but guys jerking off
everywhere,
films all of the time.
Yeah,
literally, it was such a gag that there would be multiple masturbation scenes in one movie. The same movie.
American Pie was just masturbation scenes and Jennifer Coolidge.
Yeah, I don't really remember plot, but I do remember that.
But yeah, the same way that you might not come out if somebody says something homophobic around you. You're oh, not only should I never, you're going to dislike me if I ever come out. You're going to dislike me if I have alopecia. You're going to dislike me if I'm in an open relationship. You're going to dislike me if I, so many things that it's and I love jokes. Jokes are fucking, that's my job and it's amazing. And there are, again, rooms for that type of stuff. And there's rooms for hitting too. There's boxing matches.
I think, also tackling it from a transformative justice perspective or, taking all of the concepts that I have internalized now that I have a politic around abolition. It's what was the harm that was committed and how do we rectify it? How do we fix that interpersonally? And then I see the Academy trying to punish, and rather than punish, what would be restorative to all of the viewers and to the two people involved. And I feel no, everyone is trying to pick a side rather than looking at the problem from that perspective.
Well, this one is super nuanced, and that is something that's different than these other things that the Academy has looked past before. There is no nuance in pedophilia. There's no nuance in assault. There's to the extreme, especially that Harvey Weinstein committed. And so I would like to see, the next time something happens that is definitely bad to one person, how will we respond then?
Right.
And it should be better. Anyway, we did the damn thing. Is there anything that you are plugging right now?
Not right now, but I would love if people want to learn more about how the internet functions and the original promise of the internet and what sex positive influencers are doing with the internet. My book is a great place to start. How to Live with the Internet and Not Let It Run Your Life by Gabrielle Noel. I have nothing else to plug.
That's amazing. I have to ask everybody this question at the end of a sexual experience, which this has been sexual. We've had some sexy times. Gabrielle, Alexa, Noel, did you finish?
I did.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming.
I love that.
And we'll see you guys next time on How Come? Goodbye.
Bye.
It's not you, it's me. I try so hard to finish honestly. They say you'll know when you go all the way from A right down to O. Oh no, I think that I still got a ways to go. Oh, I'm sick of this and I have got to know. How come? How come? How come I can't achieve? How come I can't achieve? I'm rolling up my sleeves. I'm rolling up my sleeves. Oh baby, I believe these guests can help. 'Cause I can't do it by myself. I wanna just
Marvel section, Marvel section. This is the Marvel section. And maybe Gabby will have stayed till the end. Hey, Gabby. You're accustomed to seeing fun things at the end. Well, this episode is no different. You guys know the drill. I've got some extra free tickets for that DC, Virginia, Maryland show. Slide into my DMs at Remy Casimir if you want to have some. I'm excited to see you. And thanks for staying till the end of this episode. Sorry there's no, pictures of Robert Pattinson. No, I'm sorry about that for me. Sorry, there's no anything else. But if you want more stuff, patreon.com/howcome has this whole episode uncensored, unedited. So if you're wondering what those bleeps were when I was like, this couple couldn't do beep, 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 go check it out. It's about somebody that I know, so had to censor it. Okay, bye.